the unassuming presence. The Galactic Defense Academy's final examination hall stretched before them like a cathedral of ambition and fear. Crystalline walls rose toward a dome that displayed the swirling galaxies beyond, while holographic displays chronicled the legendary warriors who had passed through these halls. The air hummed with nervous energy as cadets from 47 different species prepared for the most challenging test in known space. Maya Chen sat in the 7th row, her small frame almost lost among the towering alien forms surrounding her. She wore the standard-issue dark blue uniform of the Academy, though it seemed to hang loosely on her petite build. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and her brown eyes moved carefully across the room, taking in details that others missed. To most observers, she appeared unremarkable, just another human among the newer species trying to prove their worth in a galaxy dominated by ancient warrior races. But Commander Kane Mitchell knew better. He stood behind her chair like a statue, carved from living granite, his 6'3" frame radiating controlled power. His weathered face bore the marks of countless battles, and his steel-gray eyes never stopped moving, cataloging potential threats, escape routes, and tactical advantages. The other cadets gave him a wide berth, sensing something predatory in his stillness. His mere presence had been causing whispers since they arrived. 3 rows ahead, a group of Valorian cadets, their crystal blue skin gleaming under the artificial lights, spoke in hushed tones. "Why does that human girl have a guardian?" asked one, his voice carrying the musical quality of his species. "She looks like she couldn't hurt a training drone." "Maybe she's connected to their government," suggested another. "You know how these newer species try to buy their way into respect." A massive Korthak warrior, his reptilian features scarred from ritual combat, turned to study Maya with golden eyes. "I've seen many human warriors. They're decent fighters, but nothing special. That one, though," he gestured toward Kane. "That one has killed. Many times." The observation was correct. Kane had served in 17 different conflicts across the galaxy, from the siege of Kepler Station to the brutal ground war on Thanix 7. His reputation preceded him even here, in the halls of the Academy where legends were born. But none of them understood why such a warrior would dedicate himself to guarding what appeared to be an ordinary cadet. Admiral Thexara entered the hall with the measured pace of someone accustomed to absolute authority. The Zenthari commander's insectoid features were impressive even by galactic standards, her forearms moving in perfect coordination as she gestured for silence. Her compound eyes, each containing thousands of individual lenses, scanned the assembled cadets with calculating precision. "Cadets." Her voice resonated through translation devices. "Today you face the ultimate test. Not of strength, not of speed, not of technology, but of will itself." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. "You will face the Void Stalker." A collective shiver ran through the hall. Even among species known for their courage, the name carried terror. Maya remained perfectly still, but Kane noticed the almost imperceptible shift in her breathing pattern. She was preparing herself for something the others couldn't even imagine. The Admiral continued, "The Void Stalker is not merely a predator. It is a creature that exists between dimensions, feeding on the life force of conscious beings. It has been captured at tremendous cost and contained using technology that pushes the limits of our understanding." The holographic display materialized above them, showing glimpses of something that hurt to look at directly. This creature has ended the Academy careers of 137 cadets over the past decade. It learns from each encounter, adapts to every strategy, and remembers every weakness. A young Zarathi cadet, her scales shimmering nervously, raised a clawed hand. "Admiral, what exactly constitutes victory against such a creature?" "Survival," came the stark reply. 10 minutes alone with the Void Stalker. No weapons, no technology, no assistance. Just you, your training, and your will to live. The first challenger was announced. Corvex of the Titanius Empire. The 8-foot-tall giant strode forward, his metallic skin reflecting the chamber's lights like polished armor. His species was known for their incredible durability and strength, capable of surviving in the vacuum of space without protection. He entered the containment arena with confidence. his every step shaking the floor. The Void Stalker materialized like smoke given malevolent form. It wasn't entirely visible to conventional sight, existing partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that defied description. When it moved, reality seemed to bend around it, creating distortions that made watching it directly nauseating. Korvax lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. His natural armor meant nothing against a creature that attacked the soul itself. When he was finally extracted by emergency protocols, he was unconscious but alive, though he would spend weeks in medical recovery. Next came Lyria of the Swift Wind clan, a Dracani whose species moved faster than most beings could perceive. Her strategy was elegant: constant motion, never staying in one place long enough for the creature to lock onto her position. She darted around the arena like liquid light, her natural agility enhanced by generations of evolutionary refinement. The Void Stalker adapted. It began predicting her movements, cutting off escape routes, herding her into corners of its own making. Lyria managed 6 minutes and 43 seconds before exhaustion claimed her, and the creature's influence began affecting her nervous system. One by one, the galaxy's finest young warriors faced the impossible test. The crystalline monk Zephyra used meditation techniques to shield his mind for 8 minutes and 12 seconds. Valtor of the Siege Breakers employed battlefield psychology and environmental manipulation for 7 minutes and 38 seconds. Each attempt taught the Void Stalker new strategies, new ways to break the will of its opponents. 17 cadets faced the creature. 17 failures, though each pushed the boundaries of what their instructors believed possible. The pattern was always the same: initial confidence, strategic adaptation, growing desperation, and finally, the inevitable moment when the creature's alien intelligence found the weakness it needed. Then they called her name: Maya Chen, representing Earth. The silence that followed was different from the respectful quiet that had greeted the other challengers. This was the silence of confusion, of beings trying to understand why someone so unremarkable was participating in a test designed for the elite warriors of the galaxy. Maya rose from her seat with fluid grace, her movements economical and precise. Every step was placed with purpose, every gesture controlled. As she walked toward the arena, Kane fell into step beside her, matching her pace perfectly. The synchronization was unsettling to watch, as if they were two parts of the same consciousness. Human, Admiral Thexara called out, her multiple eyes focusing on Kane. The Guardian remains outside the containment field. This is an individual assessment. Kane stopped at the arena's threshold, but his eyes never left Maya. For the first time since entering the hall, he spoke, his voice carrying clearly across the silent chamber. She doesn't need me in there. The containment field activated, separating Maya from the rest of the galaxy. Inside the arena, the air itself seemed to thicken with malevolent presence. The Void Stalker emerged from between dimensions, its form more solid than it had appeared with previous challengers. It studied her with an intelligence that transcended conventional understanding, its essence probing for the familiar patterns of fear, aggression, or desperation that had marked all its previous encounters. But Maya was different. She stood in the center of the arena with her hands at her sides, making no aggressive moves, showing no defensive postures. Her breathing was calm and controlled, her heartbeat steady. To the creature's alien senses, she registered as something unprecedented, a being without fear, without the survival instincts that had driven every other challenger to eventually break under pressure. The Void Stalker circled her, its presence distorting the air around the arena's perimeter. Other cadets found it difficult to watch directly, but Maya's eyes followed its movement with steady attention. She wasn't studying it like a predator assessing prey, or like prey calculating escape routes. She was observing it with something that looked almost like scientific curiosity. Minutes passed. The creature's frustration began to manifest as reality distortions around the arena. It had adapted to counter-strength, speed, technology, and mental defenses, but Maya employed none of these. She simply existed in the space with it, unafraid and unimpressed by its dimensional superiority. Outside the containment field, Kane watched with the stillness of someone who had seen this before. His expression revealed nothing, but his posture suggested complete confidence in the outcome. The assembled cadets and instructors found his calm more unsettling than Maya's behavior in the arena. The revelation. At the 8-minute mark, something changed. Maya took a single step forward, and the Void Stalker recoiled. It wasn't a retreat born of fear or tactical repositioning. For the first time in its captured existence, the creature had encountered something that made it fundamentally uncertain. Maya spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the containment field despite the dimensional distortions. "You don't belong here," she said simply. "This isn't your reality, and you're in pain." The words struck the assembled observers like a physical blow. No previous challenger had attempted communication with the creature. Most species, xenobiologists, had concluded that the Void Stalker lacked the cognitive structures for language or complex reasoning. They were wrong. The creature's response was immediate and shocking. Its form began to solidify, taking on aspects that resembled a dozen different species but belonged to none of them. When it finally spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a sound that bypassed the ears and resonated directly in the minds of everyone present. "Pain," it agreed, the single word carrying the weight of cosmic loneliness, trapped between what is and what could be, fed on fear until fear became identity. Maya nodded as if this made perfect sense. The containment field doesn't just hold you here, it cuts you off from your home dimension. You've been feeding on fear because it's the only energy source available to you, but it's not what you need. She raised her hand, and something impossible happened. The air around her fingers began to shimmer with colors that had no names, hues that existed only in dimensions adjacent to conventional reality. The watching cadets felt their minds struggle to process what they were seeing, but Maya manipulated the dimensional interface as naturally as breathing. Kane's expression finally changed, showing the first hint of concern since entering the hall. This wasn't the full extent of Maya's abilities, but it was more than she had ever revealed in public before. "I can see the barriers they've constructed," Maya continued, her hand moving in patterns that traced geometric shapes through folded space. "They're designed to prevent dimensional travel, but they're also poisoning the local reality matrix. That's why you've been in pain." The Void Stalker moved closer, its form becoming more stable as Maya's manipulations began to affect the containment systems. "You understand?" "I understand being caught between dimensions," Maya replied. "I understand what it feels like when reality doesn't quite fit right around you, and I understand that you were never supposed to be a weapon." Admiral Thexara watched in fascination as her carefully constructed test scenario dissolved into something entirely unexpected. The containment field was designed to be impenetrable, maintained by technology that represented the pinnacle of galactic engineering achievement. Maya was altering it with nothing more than hand gestures and an understanding of dimensional mechanics that shouldn't have been possible for any known species. "What is she?" whispered the Valorian cadet who had first questioned her presence. Kane answered without turning around. "She's what happens when humanity looks at a problem everyone else considers impossible and asks, what if we tried something different?" Inside the arena, Maya had finished her modifications to the containment field. The barrier still held, but now it included pathways that connected to dimensional spaces beyond conventional reality. The Void Stalker's form began to shift again, taking on aspects that suggested its true nature for the first time. "Home," the creature said, and the word carried harmonics of gratitude that translated across species barriers. "Not yet," Maya replied, gently. "First, we need to make sure you can travel safely without accidentally pulling other beings into dimensional spaces they weren't designed for. Your feeding on fear was a survival mechanism, but it created a predatory pattern that's hard to break." She spent the remaining minutes of the test working with the creature, teaching it to process local reality without destabilizing the space around conscious beings. It was a crash course in dimensional ethics delivered in a language that transcended words, using concepts that most species hadn't developed terminology for. When the 10-minute timer expired, the Void Stalker had transformed from a nightmare predator into something that resembled a curious explorer. Maya opened one of her dimensional pathways, and the creature paused at the threshold. "Others like you?" it asked hopefully. "Many others," Maya confirmed. "And they've been wondering where you've been." The creature departed through folded space, leaving behind only a sense of gratitude and wonder that lingered in the minds of everyone present. Maya walked back to Kane without fanfare, her breathing slightly elevated from the dimensional manipulations, but otherwise showing no signs of strain. The arena returned to normal, though several instruments continued to register energy readings that defied explanation. Admiral Thexara studied the human pair with new understanding. "The guardian position," she said slowly. "It's not to protect her from external threats." Kane nodded. "Maya can manipulate reality in ways that make her effectively untouchable by conventional means. But her abilities also make it easy for her to accidentally affect things she doesn't intend to change. I'm here to help her maintain perspective on baseline reality." "How long has Earth known about her capabilities?" the Admiral asked. "Since she was 12, Kane replied. "She figured out how to fold space while working on a mathematics assignment. Took our scientists 3 years just to understand what she had done. By then, she had taught herself to navigate 17 different dimensional frameworks and established peaceful contact with 3 separate trans-dimensional species." Maya settled back into her chair as if nothing unusual had happened, though now the other cadets regarded her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. She had passed the Academy's ultimate test not through combat prowess or technological superiority, but through compassion and understanding applied to a problem everyone else had assumed required violence to solve. The implications rippled through the assembled observers like waves through still water. Humanity had just demonstrated capabilities that redefined what was considered possible in galactic society. But rather than using this revelation to claim superiority or demand recognition, Maya had employed her extraordinary gifts to heal a wounded creature and return it home. As the remaining cadets were dismissed and the day's events began to settle into memory, Kane remained at his post behind Maya's chair. His role had been misunderstood by everyone present, but now it made perfect sense. He wasn't guarding her from the galaxy's dangers. He was guarding the galaxy from the unintended consequences of power applied without sufficient caution. Maya opened her notebook and began writing what appeared to be a simple reflection on the day's events, though those familiar with her work would recognize it as documentation of several new dimensional theorems that would revolutionize physics across multiple species. She wrote with the same calm focus she had shown while facing the Void Stalker, treating world-changing discoveries as just another part of her daily routine. In the days that followed, Maya's actions would reshape diplomatic relationships across the galaxy, establish new protocols for dealing with trans-dimensional entities, and inspire a generation of scientists to explore possibilities they had never considered. But in that moment, she was simply a cadet who had found a creative solution to what everyone else considered an impossible problem. The Academy would retire the Void Stalker test, not because it had been solved, but because Maya had demonstrated that the right approach could transform any challenge from a test of survival into an opportunity for understanding. It was perhaps the most human response possible. When faced with something designed to be feared and fought, she had chosen instead to listen and help. And Kane continued to stand guard, not against external threats, but as a reminder that even the most extraordinary abilities required wisdom, restraint, and the steady presence of someone who understood that true strength sometimes meant choosing not to use the power at your disposal.